But do you know how to get there? Tune in to Coasting into Retirement with Gary Marriage of Nature Coast Financial Advisors, Sunday mornings at 8 to get answers to your retirement planning questions. Plan today so you can do the things you've always dreamt about doing in retirement. Listen Sunday mornings at 8 to Coasting into Retirement with Gary Marriage of Nature Coast Financial Advisors.
Our firm offers insurance services.
The Ocala Golf Club, one of Ocala's premier golf courses, from its pristine 18-hole course layout to its amazing pro shop. Jason Linhart and the staff at Ocala Golf offer everything that you need for your golf outing. That's the Ocala Golf Club. Experience country club style golf at municipal prices. You won't go wrong with the Ocala Golf Club. Call them for a tee time today, 352-401-6917.
This is Ocala Talks with Tom Schmidt, bringing stories that are important to our community in and around Ocala. Plus, of course, a splash of sports as well. Now, here's your host, Tom.
Welcome back to Ocala Talks on Wednesday. Last half hour of the show. Coming up at 10:30 is the American Mom. With American Moms. That'll come up at 10:30 as it does every day here on The Source. I've been talking for the last half hour about critical race theory and my not understanding what critical race theory is. I understand the definition of it. I don't understand the need to interject it into history classes. Because if a history teacher is doing their job properly, it's already there. That's right. If a history teacher is teaching history the way history is supposed to be taught, critical race theory or the elements of critical race theory are already there. Because if a history teacher is telling the whole story, then I don't understand the issue. And the whole story is that we started this country as immigrants. Everybody. The true story is that Christopher Columbus, who we celebrate in October of every year, was a bad human being. That's a fact, true story. He murdered thousands of natives in the West Indies for no other reason than we'll just kill them. That way it's safer when we get off the boats because we don't know whether they're good or bad. That's fact, folks. That's not the revisionist history that people like to tell you that Christopher Columbus was a great Italian that was a humanitarian. He wasn't. He was a bad dude. But he did discover the New World. Or he was the first to report it back. Actually, the Native Americans who came across the Bering Strait probably were the first people to discover it, and who knows what time period that was. And then the Vikings had come and gone numerous times getting pelts and everything. But Columbus somehow gets credit with discovering the New World when in actuality he never even stepped foot in the United States. Don't let the truth get in the way of a good story, though. I'm trying to answer, go away. So, if you teach history completely, I don't understand the issue. Good morning, you're on Ocala Talks.
Hey, sorry about that, Tom.
Hey, Mark.
Phone's a little too...
There's the guy I wanted to call because I know you can give me the Marine Corps definition from a guy who is on the other side of the aisle from me. Am I overreacting to this critical race thing?
Well, I don't watch any of the conservative input groups, but it is being discussed on the left, and it's actually, for some of the people that I listen to that I like, they actually refer to it as it's kind of like defund the police. They refer to it as very poor language for trying to attempt what most Americans are already receiving and understanding. So I'm not calling to disagree with you, Tom. I'm actually calling to tell you I'm glad you survived the incident at the intersection. But I'm actually, Tom. We've not met in person, but Joe can confirm this. I'm actually in between yourself and Joe. I'll never have a neck that well developed, but that's from all the years of running and carrying backpacks and shooting, I guess. But I just wanted to say that you're a history buff, history educated person. But Abraham Lincoln had the black speaker. What was the gentleman's name, Tom?
Frederick Douglass.
Frederick Douglass finally got a chance to see Abraham Lincoln. He petitioned him many times, and Lincoln finally saw him once or twice. And Frederick Douglass says to him, my son is a sergeant in the Union Army, and my other son's a private. If there's anything you could do about them getting paid, they're receiving half the wages of the white soldiers. I'm not trying to quote Frederick Douglass.
No, but that's a fact. That was a fact.
And Lincoln said, if there's anything I can do, I can do something about that. And obviously he did. And I appreciate your the fact you're a teacher is commendable right there. You have been a teacher. That shows interest in our country, in your own life, and it's impressive. I'm a fan of it. I grew up the son of a Marine, and so history affects Marines rather quickly. We are either already involved in history or about to be involved. We're right there at all times. In the Marine Corps, they have a saying: we have light green Marines and dark green Marines, but we're all MF and Marines. So we're Marines.
Right.
So that's how the Marines look at it. And Marines don't discriminate. They treat everybody like a borrowed mule. So
100%.
That's just the way it is. And they don't mess around with the subject. They take it serious. And I've been challenged in various circumstances to no surprise while even in the Marine Corps, and by people that thought you have an impression of something or were checking to see if you had one. And that's one of the things they ferret out in the 90-day procedure called boot camp. They do go after that issue because they want everybody singing off the same sheet of music. So I'm not calling to make any claims about yourself, and actually I think you're a gift to the community, Tom.
I appreciate those kind words, Mark, and I tell you what, this as a Marine. My father used to say this all the time when people would say, Schmidt, my dad was a diverse man. He had friends of all kind of colors because he was a Marine, and he'd served with men of all kind of color. He goes, a bullet doesn't distinguish anybody's skin color. It's just trying to kill you.
I like the way you said that, Tom. Yeah, that's true. I obviously that's a fact.
That's a fact. Hey, Mark, thanks for the call.
Yeah, you're welcome, Tom.
What Mark said is right. The Marine Corps, they get that systemic problem or a reported systemic problem out of you in boot camp. By the time they leave boot camp, everybody's on the same page, or you didn't make it through boot camp. But I go back to the fact that everybody wants critical race theory taught. They want it taught that Jim Crow laws created racist attitudes in the South and created an inequality that is still being overcome to this day. I'm okay with that. I taught that when I taught high school. See, here's the problem. We get caught up in textbooks. And we get caught up with what textbooks say. And if you're a teacher worth your grit, the textbook is a guide, but it's not the Holy Bible. There's only one Holy Bible, folks. There's only one Word of God. So a textbook is a guide. It's not the written law has to be taught that way. Because textbooks take whoever writes the textbooks, the author's agendas or their thoughts and everything, sometimes shade, sometimes, like I'll give you a case in point. When I took War and Society 1861 to the present with Chuck Thomas, Dr. Chuck Thomas at Georgia Southern, he wanted to show us, because we were all going to be teachers, he wanted to show us the different way that the Vietnam War was talked about in history books. And he brought in two books, one that was being used at the time in a school system in Nebraska, the Lincoln school system in Nebraska, and another a book that was being used by a district in Texas. I forget what district it was, but Chuck brought these two books in, and he discussed how Vietnam was written by one textbook, how it was written by, and it was being used in two school systems. One of the textbook's main author was a historian of note who was a 11th generation American, and folks traced his history back to the Mayflower and everything. The other history was written by a doctor of history from UCLA that was of an Asian background. The one that the 11th generation, Western, Scandinavian, I don't know if he's Scandinavian English, but from colonial days, from his heritage all the way back to colonial days. Vietnam was covered in a page and a half, and it was talked about how it was trying to defend democracy and everything, and it was very glossed over. The book written by the man of Asian, by his ethnicity was Asian, the Vietnam was discussed there in 7 pages, and it went into the oppression of the South Vietnamese by not only the North Vietnamese, but by the French and by the U.S., and it was a much more, even though it was only 7 pages, which is still far too little, it went into more detail on Vietnam than the other book did. Or which book is better? I would say both of them are good because they talk about Vietnam, and then as a teacher, you're supposed to teach. It's not about letting them read a textbook and answer the questions in the back. It's called teacher because the root word is to teach. Do I think some textbooks gloss over and leave out some facts that happen in our past history and don't tell the whole story? 100%. Do I think textbooks sometimes shed a light on it that puts an emphasis on some part of history and makes it more important than it actually was in history? 100%. But that's why textbooks are guidelines. Textbooks are not to be the be-all, end-all. The be-all, end-all is the person creating the lesson plan. The be-all, end-all is the person that's writing the lesson plan that is going to be taught on a day-to-day basis. If you're a history teacher and you're not teaching complete history, you are lying to yourself and doing an injustice to your students. Were Jim Crow laws racist laws? 100%. Were they designed to keep people of color in subservient situations and less than? 100%. I taught it that way because that's the truth. It's all inclusive. You got to teach all history. These people that are trying to remove statues and take the carving off of a Stone Mountain because it memorializes the Confederacy. It was part of our history. If you don't like it, I understand you don't like being reminded of it or anything. Could they be moved to museums? That's another discussion. But to destroy them and act like, erase it like it never happened, like there wasn't such a person named Stonewall Jackson, like there wasn't a man named Nathan B. Forrest, like Robert E. Lee was not part of history. Well, that's just dumb as hell to leave that out. That would be like saying Crispus Attucks didn't have anything to do with the American Revolution. We're just going to leave him out. He really didn't have anything to do with it, We leave that out. You can't. Crispus Attucks was a man of color and was one of the first 5 to die in the pursuit of freedom by the colonials against the oppression of the English. If you leave him out, you're not telling the truth. Just the same as if you leave out Nathan B. Forrest and you don't tell the whole story about him, you're not telling the whole story. You're not telling the truth. Just as if you left Selma out, and the March on Selma, which, by the way, the civil rights movement of the 60s changed the face of this nation for the better. But if you don't explain it all totally, if you leave out, oh, look, we want to leave, the cannons and the German shepherds, can we cut those out of the newsreels now? They don't make white people look good. That's a lie if you do that. The same way if you cut out what happened in the Watts riots, it makes African Americans in Los Angeles don't look too good with the Watts riots. Maybe we should cut that out. You're lying about history then. If you tell the entire story, you don't have to teach critical race theory because it's already in there. Racism has been a problem in this country for years. It's better now than it's ever been, although you wouldn't be able to tell it if you listen to the news. But it's a world issue. It's not just an American issue. And every ethnicity has faced some sort of racism since the beginning of time. Remember, the Israelites were the slaves of the Egyptians. You don't get to only talk about the part of history that you think makes you look good and somebody else look bad. If you do that, you're a liar. Because you didn't tell the whole truth. You didn't tell the whole story. Critical race theory, the way I'm looking at it here, wants to say that all white people are racist and all white people are terrible because of the inequalities created by the U.S. government over time. That may be an oversimplification, but that's what I think it wants you to say. That's what I garnered from it. And by the way, not all white people are bad. Not all black people are bad. Not all Asian people are bad. Not all Hispanic people are bad. There are some in all those groups that are horrible people. Once again, that's what's the word? Fact. But we get lost in opinions and conjecture and how people's feelings get involved. And then it gets bastardized. History gets bastardized and turned into what somebody in their agenda wants you to think history was. The fact of the matter is, we live in the greatest country on the face of the earth, and if that wasn't a fact, why are so many people knocking down the door trying to get in? Fact is that a Somali refugee is a U.S. House of Representatives member from Minneapolis. That's a fact. How bad's racism there? There is a fact that in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and some of the 70s, there was a horrible group of people called the Ku Klux Klan that were racist, should have faced jail and prison time, but because a lot of them were judges and lawyers and police officers in the South, that didn't happen. That's a fact. That needs to be taught in class. I taught that in class because it was all of the history. The American history model is not a pretty model. There are times of gorgeous American history. There are also times of ugly, ugly, ugly American history. But what you don't know, that I know because history's my thing, I can go show you some gorgeous times in British history. I can also show you some ugly, ugly, ugly times between the English, the Irish, the Welsh, and the Scottish. I could go to Spain, show you great parts of Spanish history. Then I can go show you ugly, ugly parts of Spanish history with the Basque and the Spanish. I can show it to you. The Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. I can show you ugly Spanish history. But it's all part of it. Germany has a rich, 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 beautiful history. My father was from Germany. It also had the moron named Adolf Hitler, which was a spot, a nasty blight on the history of the world. You can go back and look at great, great history of Russia. I can also show you how the czars were terrible people to their own people. The Bolsheviks revolted, but then the Communist Party came in, took over that. I can show you that Joseph Stalin was maybe worse than Hitler. There's historical scholars that will make the argument that Joseph Stalin was as bad, if not worse, than Hitler, but he got a pass because he was helping the United States and Great Britain. I teach that history that way. My point is, history is what it is. Sometimes it's beautiful. Sometimes it's boring. Sometimes it's downright shameful. But you can't pick and choose what parts you teach. You got to teach it all, or you're a liar. My mama taught me a long time ago that if you don't tell the whole truth, that's just as bad as a lie. I could show you throughout this world. China, oh my God, some of the dynasties in China were some of the best civilizations, some of the best dynasties, some of the best treatment of people you will ever read in historical documentation. We know how bad it is there now. We know the social injustice and the impoverization of the Chinese people. We know the genocide that is being portrayed to some people in China. We know that. Ugly, ugly history. The Roman Empire. Some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest technology, some of the greatest artwork ever. I can also show you where the Roman Empire was horrible. But you know what that's called? It's called history. It's not called, everybody says, oh, you revisionist. I'm not revising history. You're trying to revise history by changing it to fit your narrative, whether you're conservative or liberal. If you're trying to change history to fit your narrative, David Duke used to do it all the time. The former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan that tried to become a normal citizen and aligned himself with the Republican Party. Bad dude. He tried to revise history to make you show how white people were better. We're not. You people that want to stop talking about history or only talk about the part that makes you look better and other people look worse, you're the problem. I was watching that news this morning, and that thing came up about critical race theory, and I didn't even understand what the hell it was, but I knew it had something to do with how you're going to teach it in a history class. You should already be teaching about the good, the bad, and the ugly in the history of the United States. So if you're teaching the good, the bad, and the ugly the way a teacher should, then there's no problem. You're teaching everything that needs to be covered. If you're not, you're a bad teacher. Stop letting them read the textbook, go to the end of the chapter, answer the vocabulary words, and take a test on Friday. Here's a hint. Teachers in the world who say, oh, they're trying to control our ability to teach by saying we can't do critical race theory. Here's something. Actually teach, damn it. Make a lesson plan. Have some ideas. Don't rely only on your textbook. There's a novel idea. Maybe prepare students for, upcoming years of college where lectures are the norm. If I'd have had a history teacher that would actually lecture, so I'd have learned how to take notes in the 11th and 12th grade, I would have spent my freshman year of college trying to catch up, learning how to take notes and be an effective college student. We don't need to force critical race theory or not teach critical race theory. What we need to do is force teachers to teach the whole subject of history. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Teach the Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, and Eli Wallach of history. The good, the bad, and the ugly. Coming up next, the American moms, because I'm so aggravated now, I can't even, I got to shut the microphone off, I probably need to go take an ice bath. I'm so aggravated. The American moms are here next. Vanessa Stanfield, Lori Martin Gregory, brought to you by Stanfield Chiropractic. They'll be here after this short time out on 1370 AM, 96.3 FM. This is WOCA. We tell the whole story here.